Welcome to the OK Let's Learn podcast. This is two podcasts in one where we dive into tons of interesting topics, and another where we dive into tons of interesting books and stories. My name is Kevin O'Keefe. So today, let's learn all about June's top 20 moments in history. Yes, I will say up front what's interesting about this month, more than any other month since I've started this series, and we go back to January, and we still got 6 months to go. I couldn't come up with a good list of the top 20 moments. There wasn't that many moments in history. Of course, if I dug deeper, I could have found some more. But what's interesting is that June, you think of June, what do you think of? Well, you're up here in the eastern part of the United States, and yes, different places throughout the country work this differently, but you think of June, you think of school being over, you think of the beginning of summer, you think of, yes, even graduations for the most part you'll have for high school. Colleges for the most part are in May, but it's that time of year that the weather is really starting to get nicer. It's summertime. It's time to go to the beach and just enjoy family. And of course, if you're not heading down to the beach, maybe you're going up north, enjoying the countryside, enjoying hanging out by the pool. But let's get started. Number 20, June 3rd, 1961. And yeah, that's right. It's my podcast. My parents, Marilyn and Ed O'Keefe, were married on this day. As of the recording of this podcast, in 2026, they'll be married now, 65 years. God bless my parents. I love them so much. They've done so much for my life. And if you know about the butterfly effect, well, if my dad hadn't asked my mom to marry him, and if it didn't go through, I wouldn't be here today, and we wouldn't be doing this podcast. So, happy anniversary, Mom and Dad. Number 19, June 25th, 1876. On this day, this was the Battle of Little Bighorn. Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer and about 210 soldiers attacked the Lakota Sioux, the Northern Cheyenne, and the Arapaho people along this river called Little Bighorn. It's in present-day Montana. Custer underestimated the size of the village and split his forces. Within a few hours, Custer and all the men with them were killed. The battle became known as Custer's Last Stand and certainly remains one of the most famous battles in American history. And again, this goes without saying, but this series of podcasts, listen, famous moments in history, famous can mean it being good, famous can mean it was bad. These were moments that are indelible in our memory. Unfortunately, they're bad, some of them, but fortunately, they're good. So it's a mixture. And when we get to the top 5, you'll see that I don't rank them. I don't rank them because how can you say that a horrible event was the best, quote unquote? What we're talking about is influential, changed the course of history, and certainly memorable. So let's get back to the countdown. Number 18, June 18th, 1983. I was alive. I was in college. I remember it to this day. Sally Ride became the first American woman in space. She blasted off aboard the Space Shuttle Challenger at age 32. She became, like I said, the first woman to travel into space. During the mission, she helped operate the shuttle's robotic arm and spent nearly a week in orbit. Her flight inspired millions of young people, especially girls, to pursue science and engineering. Number 17, June 30th, 1936. The book Gone with the Wind was published. Arthur Margaret Mitchell put out this book on this date. The novel, set during the American Civil War and Reconstruction, became one of the best-selling books ever written. It won the Pulitzer Prize and later was made into one of Hollywood's most famous films. Number 16, June 21st, 1948. The vinyl record was released. Columbia Records put out this long-playing record, commonly called an LP. Unlike older records that could hold only a few minutes of music per side, vinyl LPs could hold entire albums. This invention transformed the music industry and became the standard way people listened to music for decades. Number 15, June 16th, 1858. Abraham Lincoln had his House Divided speech. He was running for the U.S. Senate, and he delivered this famous speech in Illinois. He warned that the United States could not continue permanently half slave and half free. The speech helped make Lincoln a national figure and foreshadowed, unfortunately, the coming Civil War. Number 14, June 12th, 1987, another famous speech. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. It was delivered by Ronald Reagan, our president, near the Berlin Wall in West Berlin, and Reagan challenged Mikhail Gorbachev, the Soviet leader, with those famous words. The speech became one of the defining moments of the Cold War, and 2 years later, the Berlin Wall fell. Number 13, June 19th, 1865. We celebrate Juneteenth. More than 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, Union General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas, and announced that slaves were now free. The day became known as Juneteenth and is now celebrated as a federal holiday in the United States. Number 12, June 26th, 1945, the United Nations is born. Representatives from 50 nations signed the charter that created this amazing organization in San Francisco. After the devastation of World War II, the goal was to create an organization that could help nations resolve their disputes peacefully and hopefully prevent future global wars. Number 11, June 15th, 1215. Oh yeah, we're going back that far. King John of England, on this date, agreed to the Magna Carta in England. The document limited the king's power and established the idea that even rulers must obey the law. It became one of the most influential documents in the history of democracy and individual rights. Number 10, June 4th, 1989. After weeks of student-led protests calling for political reform, Chinese troops moved into Beijing's Tiananmen Square area. Yes, we just know this date, and we refer to it as Tiananmen Square. The military crackdown ended the demonstrations and resulted in many deaths, although the exact number remains disputed. The event became one of the most significant and controversial moments in the late 20th century. The most iconic moment, no doubt, during that event was when that man would not move and the tank was right in front of him. Every time the tank tried to go around him, he stood in front of it. And what's interesting about this moment, it came 2 years after the Berlin Wall fell. So quite a number of years during this time period where the world was definitely changing. Number 9, June 10th, 1752, Benjamin Franklin's kite experiment. According to the traditional account, Benjamin Franklin flew a kite during a thunderstorm to demonstrate that lightning was a form of electricity. The experiment helped advance scientific understanding of electricity and eventually led to the invention of the lightning rod. Number 8, June 7th, 1892, definitely a moment that's not celebrated, but it was Homer Plessy and when he challenged segregation. Homer Plessy deliberately sat in a whites-only railroad car in Louisiana and refused to move. His arrest led to the Supreme Court case Plessy versus Ferguson, which upheld racial segregation under the doctrine separate but equal. The ruling stood for nearly 60 years. Number 7, a better moment, certainly. June 13th, 1966. It's all about the Miranda rights. This Supreme Court case, Miranda versus Arizona, the court ruled that police must inform suspects of certain constitutional rights before questioning them. This gave rise to the familiar warning that begins, "You have the right to remain silent." Number 6, June 12th, 1967, almost a year later to the day. And it's interesting when you think of June, no doubt there's this flurry, usually at the end of June, of all of the previous year's Supreme Court cases that are released to the public in terms of their decisions. And this one, no doubt, was a big one. It was Loving versus Virginia. The Supreme Court unanimously ruled that states could not ban interracial marriage. The case involved Richard Loving and Mildred Loving, a married couple who had been arrested because Virginia law prohibited people of different races from marrying. The decision struck down laws across the country. I mean, can you imagine this? It really is just, in my lifetime, such an amazing fact that these laws were on the books going back to this time period. Okay, we're in the top 5. And again, in no particular order. First, Robert F. Kennedy on June 5th, 1968 is assassinated shortly after he celebrated a major victory in California's presidential primary election. Robert F. Kennedy was shot at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles. He died the following day. Many Americans saw Kennedy as the next leader that was going to bring us through this turbulent era, and his death shocked the nation. So much of what was happening in the late 60s was so horrible. And of course, this coming off the assassination attempt just a few years before with John F. Kennedy, our president. The Kennedys were considered our future, and so many people were really devastated with this happening. June 18th, 1815, the Battle of Waterloo. In present-day Belgium, forces led by Napoleon Bonaparte fought British and Allied troops along with Prussian forces. Napoleon was defeated and he ended his rule and brought to a close more than 2 decades of major European wars. June 17th, 1972, the Watergate break-in. 5 men were arrested after breaking into the headquarters of the Democratic National Committee at the Watergate complex in Washington, D.C. What at first appeared to be a simple burglary eventually uncovered a huge political scandal that ultimately led to the resignation of our president, Richard M. Nixon. No doubt a future episode. Now, the last 2. June 28th, 1914, the assassination that sparked World War I. In Sarajevo, Gavrilo Princip assassinated Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife, Sophie. Within weeks alliances among European nations pulled country after country into war, beginning what they called at that time the Great War, but what we now know as World War I. And finally, before we roll out certainly what I think is one of the most memorable moments in the history of June, and I think most people in the United States think of it, you got to talk about June 21st, right? The longest day of the year in the Northern Hemisphere and the shortest day in the Southern Hemisphere. It's the summer solstice. Talk about a long day. I hope most of you experience the happiness that comes with being out in the sunshine, not getting late until it's like 9 p.m. and it's just now starting to get dark. Hey, but no doubt one of the biggest moments ever in the month of June was June 6th, 1944. D-Day. Before dawn, more than 150,000 Allied troops from the United States, Britain, Canada, and other nations crossed the English Channel and landed on the beach of Normandy, France. Facing fierce German defenses, they fought their way ashore and established a foothold in Nazi-occupied Europe. D-Day became the largest seaborne invasion in history and marked the beginning of the liberation of Western Europe during World War II. Friends, thanks for staying with me on this journey of the top 20 moments in June. Reach out to me at kevmok21@gmail.com. We have a Facebook group and we have a YouTube channel. They're both called OK Let's Learn. Hit that plus button in the top right-hand corner of your Apple podcast. That will subscribe you to the podcast so you can get episodes delivered to your phone automatically. We're getting out episodes every couple days. And finally, love those ratings on Apple Podcasts or any podcast platform of your choosing. Reviews are also fantastic. Until next time, have fun and keep learning.